Before we get started, please like and subscribe. Let me know where you're watching from, and you can support the channel by clicking thanks or joining. Ethan Gray had seen the house only once before it became his. It stood at the far edge of a narrow rural road, hidden behind tall pines that twisted together like dark fingers, hiding a secret. Even from a distance, the structure felt wrong, as if it leaned toward anyone who dared to look at it. The wooden siding was warped, the roof sagged, and the attic window stared outward like a single watching eye. Ethan inherited the property after his father passed away, a man who rarely spoke and never revealed much about their family history. The house was the last remaining connection to a past Ethan knew almost nothing about. He arrived with quiet hope, imagining answers hidden in dusty rooms. But the moment he stepped out of his car, the air changed. The forest was warm, but the space around the house was cold enough to sting his skin. A hush spread through the branches, as if the trees themselves held their breath. Ethan walked toward the porch. Each step on the wooden boards echoed louder than expected, as if the house were listening. Inside, the air was stale and heavy with dust. Furniture sat untouched. Portrait frames lined the hallway walls, but the images inside were blurred and faded beyond recognition. He wiped the dust from one frame. Instead of revealing a face, the image seemed to retreat deeper into the glass. Ethan blinked and stepped back. The living room felt worse. The fireplace bricks were cracked. The carpet bore dark stains shaped like twisted circles. When Ethan touched one, the floor vibrated slightly. It felt like a faint heartbeat. He pulled his hand away. A whisper of unease stirred in his chest. He tried to shake it off. Old houses always made strange sounds. He walked toward the staircase. Strange carvings covered the banister, lines twisting in looping shapes that felt almost alive. When his fingers touched one, a cold shock ran up his arm. He took a step back. Footsteps sounded above him. Slow, heavy, careful. Ethan froze. They were not random creaks. Someone was walking across the attic floor. The steps stopped. The attic door creaked open by itself. Only a narrow gap, but enough for Ethan to see darkness deeper than any shadow. Enough to see the faint outline of something standing just behind the door. His breath caught in his throat. His heartbeat roared in his ears. The house groaned. The attic door opened wider. Ethan could not move. His muscles locked. His mind screamed at him to run, but his body would not obey. The shadow behind the door shifted, and then it whispered, "Ethan." His name, spoken softly, spoken as if the house itself remembered him. He stumbled backward, nearly tripping over himself. He grabbed the front door, yanked it open, and ran. He did not stop until he reached his car. His hands shook as he fumbled for the keys. When he finally looked back, the attic door had closed again. The house stood silently beneath the trees, waiting, and Ethan understood something he had never believed before. A house should not know a person's name, but this one did. Ethan had spent only a single night inside the house, yet by morning he felt as if the walls had memorized him. As dawn crept through the fractured windows, the light did not feel warm. It felt investigative, as though it were illuminating every detail he had tried to forget. He awoke on the dusty couch in the living room, heart pounding, unsure whether the sound he heard was his own breath or that whisper again, the whisper that had slithered out from the staircase at midnight, the whisper that said his name. He pushed himself upright, muscles aching. The air was freezing, far too cold for a house abandoned for nearly a century. He rubbed his hands together, then froze. His palms were streaked with dust, but also something else. Something black, something that smelled faintly metallic. He stumbled into the kitchen, searching for running water, but none of the faucets worked. Instead, he caught his reflection in a broken window. It was brief, maybe only a flicker, but he saw it. Behind him, a silhouette, tall, motionless. Watching, he spun around. Nothing, but the house was not silent. Somewhere above him, floorboards shifted, weighty and deliberate, like someone pacing slowly along the hallway. Ethan felt the pressure of the house push inward on him, as though it wanted him upstairs, as though it needed him to remember something. He tried to steady himself. The stories he had heard about this house were supposed to be just that, stories. Rumors about a place built by a family who had vanished without explanation. Tales of neighbors hearing screams even when the house was empty. Legends of people entering once and emerging changed, convinced the house had spoken to them. Ethan didn't believe in haunted places. He believed in trauma, in buried truth, in wounds the mind tried to hide. But the longer he stayed in the house, the more he felt the boundaries of psychology bending. This wasn't grief. This wasn't imagination. The house was aware, and it wanted his secrets. His chest tightened as a memory surfaced sharp, sudden, unwanted. The accident, the night he never talked about, the night he wished he could erase. No, he forced the memory back into the darkness. He couldn't face that now. Not here. The footsteps above him stopped. Then the house exhaled. It wasn't a creak, not a shift of settling wood. It was a breath, a long, slow, knowing breath that poured down the staircase like a cold mist. Ethan grabbed his backpack from the floor, his instinct screaming to leave. But when he approached the front door, it refused to open. The knob turned, but the door behaved like a living muscle, tensing against him. "You do not leave," a whisper breathed. Ethan staggered back, pulse thundering. Who said that? Silence. Then the sound of paper sliding across wood. A single envelope lay on the hallway floor, as if placed there by an invisible hand. His name was written across it in delicate cursive: Ethan Ward. He picked it up, fingers trembling. Inside was a single sheet of yellowed paper. On it was a sentence written in charcoal black ink. "I know why you are really here." Ethan's skin tightened. He wasn't here for research. He wasn't here to write a book. He was here because of what happened 3 years ago. Because of the one truth he had buried so deeply, he prayed no one would ever unearth it. But the house had, and it wasn't finished. The staircase groaned, a slow invitation against every instinct he had. Ethan climbed. Each step seemed to sink under his weight, as though the house were tasting him. By the time he reached the upper hallway, he felt his heartbeat in his teeth. The hallway stretched farther than he remembered. Doors lined the walls, but one stood open, waiting. Inside was a bedroom preserved in time dollhouse furniture, pink curtains faded to gray, and a single bed where a stuffed bear sat upright, its glass eyes cloudy. Ethan didn't want to enter, yet his body moved on its own. Then the closet door opened. A girl's voice whispered, "You left me." Ethan collapsed to his knees, breath ripped from his lungs. The memory he fought so hard to bury surged forward. The night of the accident, the screams, the girl, her hand slipping from his inability to save her. He gasped, "No, please." The shadow in the closet shifted. "You can't hide from what you did," it said. Ethan backed away, shaking violently. The walls pulsed like a heartbeat. The floor rippled beneath him. The entire house was alive, feeding on his guilt, drawing strength from his pain. He stumbled into the hallway and ran, but the hallway stretched on endlessly, twisting, looping, reshaping itself. Doors appeared where walls once were, windows opened to black voids. The house was rearranging itself to trap him. You don't get to escape. The whisper followed. Ethan turned a corner, and suddenly he was back in the living room, as if the house had folded reality like paper. He collapsed onto the couch, trembling. He couldn't think. He couldn't breathe. The house wanted his truth, and until he faced it, it would own him. Ethan sat on the dust-covered couch, lungs burning, as though the very air inside the house were thick with memory. He pressed a trembling hand to his chest, trying to steady the chaotic rhythm of his heartbeat. The house had shown him things he had buried, things he had sworn to never relive. But it was not finished. The walls still felt alive, as if waiting for the next truth to bleed out of him. Morning light leaked weakly across the warped floorboards, but it did nothing to comfort him. The house did not allow comfort. He rose slowly, unsure if his legs would hold him. Something in the air had changed to heaviness, a shift, a low hum vibrating through the floor. Ethan felt it crawling up his spine, urging him deeper into the house, deeper into himself. He tried to resist, but his feet moved anyway. The corridor ahead was darker than before. Shadows thickened like tar, clinging to the walls, swallowing the faint light behind him. He flicked on his flashlight, but the beam behaved strangely, stretching unnaturally long, narrowing to a thin line. It looked less like light and more like a probing finger reaching into the dark. He stepped forward. The house groaned in response. Every footstep stirred memories, fragments of laughter, broken glass, the sickening screech of metal on metal, memories he had sealed away. But here, nothing stayed buried. As he approached the dining room, he noticed something new. The table was set. Plates, silverware, glasses each arranged perfectly, as if a family had only just stepped out for a moment. But the dust told a different story. The thick layer coating everything except the table suggested the house had prepared it. For him, a single chair was pulled out, waiting. Ethan hesitated, but a cold wind pushed against his back, ushering him inside. He sat, pulse hammering. The moment he did, the lights flickered, old bulbs sparking to life above him, despite having no electricity. The silverware rattled, the glasses chimed softly, as though touched by invisible hands. Then a voice whispered across the table, "Tell the truth." Ethan shot to his feet, knocking the chair backward. "I don't know what you want from me," the house answered with a violent tremor. The walls rippled like water. The ceiling cracked, a long fracture racing across the plaster. Ethan stumbled back, bracing himself against the wall as the room contorted. Dishes flew off the table, shattering in midair. Shadows lengthened, forming shapes, arms, hands reaching. "Stop!" he shouted, covering his ears. "Stop!" The shadows froze. Then slowly, deliberately, they pointed toward the staircase. Ethan's breath caught. No, not again. But the house insisted. The pressure in the air increased, pushing him toward the stairs. His feet scraped helplessly along the ground as the invisible force dragged him. When he reached the bottom step, the pressure lifted. He stood there shaking, staring upward into suffocating darkness. He took the first step. The house inhaled. He ascended slowly, each step accompanied by a nauseating pulse beneath the floorboards. By the time he reached the landing, sweat clung to his skin despite the frigid air. The hallway was longer, impossibly longer. Doors lined the walls like sentinels, each one identical, each one humming with faint energy. But one door was different. It was slightly ajar, leaking a thin ribbon of warm, golden light, the only warmth he had felt since entering the house. Ethan approached cautiously. The closer he got, the warmer the air became, the softer his breath grew. His hand hovered over the door, uncertain. Terrified, he pushed it open. Inside was a small study, entirely untouched by decay. Polished wood gleamed in the warm light of an oil lamp that shouldn't have been burning. Books covered the shelves. Papers were neatly arranged on a desk, and on the far wall hung a painting. A girl with soft brown eyes and a smile that made Ethan's stomach twist. "Lily," he staggered back. No, this isn't real." But the painting changed. Her smile faded, her eyes darkened, and then, slowly, her painted gaze shifted to look directly at him. "You promised," she whispered from inside the canvas. Ethan collapsed against the wall, breath hitching. "I didn't mean to leave you. I tried to save you." The lamp flickered, dimming until the room was swallowed by shadows. Lily's figure stepped out of the painting, her outline dissolving at the edges like smoke. She approached him, each step echoing like a heartbeat. "You let go," she said softly. "You didn't hold on." Tears welled in Ethan's eyes. "I slipped. The rain, the metal. I couldn't." Her figure twisted suddenly, contorting into something monstrous. Limbs stretching, mouth widening into an inhuman scream. "You left me." The room exploded with violent energy. Books flew off the shelves. Papers spiraled into the air. The desk shattered. Ethan covered his head, crawling backward as the monstrous form lunged at him. But just before it reached him, everything stopped. Silence. When Ethan opened his eyes, the room was normal again. The painting hung quietly on the wall. The lamp glowed softly. There was no sign of Lily, except for one thing. A new line had appeared on the painting, written in delicate script beneath her portrait. "You cannot run from the past." Ethan rose shakily, wiping tears from his face. He needed to get out of the room, out of the house, out of this nightmare that refused to let him breathe. He reached for the doorknob, but it melted under his touch, dripping like hot wax down the door. The house was sealing him inside. "No," Ethan whispered. "Please, don't." The walls shuddered. Then the voice spoke again, louder this time, resonating through every beam and floorboard. "Tell the truth." Ethan pressed his back against the wall. Trembling, he could feel the house's heartbeat sinking with his own. It wanted the memory he feared most, the moment he let go of Lily's hand, the moment the world shattered. "I can't," he whispered. "You must." Ethan squeezed his eyes shut as the floor split open beneath him, revealing darkness so deep it felt alive. Tendrils of shadow curled around his ankles, pulling him toward the chasm. He screamed, clawing at the floor, but the darkness was patient, deliberate, consuming. As he slipped further into the void, the house whispered, "Only truth will set you free." Then the darkness swallowed him whole. Darkness swallowed Ethan whole. For a moment, he felt weightless, suspended in a void so vast it seemed to stretch beyond reality itself. He tried to scream, but the sound dissolved into the darkness, absorbed like water into dry earth. The fall seemed endless, yet at the same time, he felt as if something were holding him in place, forcing him to float between worlds. The void was not empty, it watched him. Then, with a brutal snap, the world reformed beneath him. Ethan crashed onto a cold surface. His breath burst from his lungs as pain rippled up his spine. He groaned, pushing himself onto his hands and knees. The surface beneath him felt like stone, but it pulsed faintly, as if alive. His fingers recoiled instinctively. He lifted his head. He was in a massive chamber, far beneath the house. The ceiling arched so high it vanished into shadow. The walls were made of old brick, but they twisted unnaturally, bending inward and outward like the ribs of a colossal beast. Pale veins of light crawled through the cracks, pulsing with a slow, steady rhythm. A heartbeat. The house had a heartbeat. Ethan staggered to his feet. His breathing sounded too loud, echoing back at him in distorted whispers. He took a step forward, then froze as the chamber shifted. Brick rippled like liquid, reshaping itself into towering pillars. The ground beneath him trembled, forming a circular pattern that glowed a dull red. He stood at the center of it, a ritual circle. "No," Ethan whispered. "This isn't real." But the house responded. A voice rose from the walls, layered and ancient, like the memories of countless souls speaking as one. "You cannot hide from truth." Ethan clenched his fists. "I didn't hide anything. The chamber trembled violently. "You lie." A blast of cold air struck him, forcing him backward. Shadows peeled away from the walls, twisting into human forms, faceless, wavering, reaching. Ethan stumbled, raising his arms defensively as the shadows circled him. Their movements were slow, deliberate, like predators savoring fear. Images flickered within them. Cars, rain, metal twisting, Lily's face pressed against a shattered window. "Stop!" Ethan shouted. "Stop, please." But the shadows only pressed closer. "You let her go," they whispered. "You released her. It wasn't my fault." The shadows screamed, a sound that tore at his sanity. They lunged. Ethan fell to his knees as their hands plunged into him, not physically, but through memory. The chamber dissolved, replaced by a stormy night. Rain hammered the windshield. Headlights cut crooked lines across the darkness. Screeching metal filled the air. Ethan sat behind the wheel, helpless as the car spun, flipped, crashed. Lily's scream echoed through him. "Hold on," Ethan shouted into the memory, but the moment replayed the same way it always had. Lily's hand slipped from his, her small fingers, slick with rain, tore free. Her terrified eyes locked with his for one last impossible second. Then she was gone. The vision shattered. Ethan gasped, collapsing onto the glowing floor of the chamber. Tears streamed down his face. He didn't try to wipe them away. He didn't have the strength. A soft voice broke through the silence. "Ethan." He lifted his head. Lily stood before him, but this Lily was not twisted or monstrous. She looked exactly as she had the day he lost her, brown hair tied back with a ribbon, gentle eyes, small hands clasped in front of her. She smiled sadly. "You keep running," she said softly, "but you can't run from what happened." Ethan shook his head. "I tried to save you, I swear. Lily, I tried. I know." The chamber brightened. The veins of light pulsed faster, responding to her presence. "But you blame yourself more than anyone ever could," she said. "You carry it like a chain. I let you fall," Ethan whispered. "I let you die." Lily stepped closer. "You didn't let me go. The world slipped. The road slipped. The night slipped. Not you." Ethan felt something crack inside him, not pain, but release. A pressure he had carried for years loosened. Lily reached out her hand. "You can forgive yourself," she said. Ethan hesitated. Will you forgive me?" Her smile was warm. "I already did." He reached for her hand, but before their fingers touched, the chamber convulsed violently. The house screamed. The ground cracked open beneath them, splitting into wide, jagged fractures. Lily flickered like a dying flame. "No," Ethan shouted. "Lily!" The floor exploded with shadow. Tendrils wrapped around Lily, pulling her backward into a churning vortex of darkness. Her face twisted in fear as she reached for Ethan. "Don't leave me again," she cried. Ethan lunged, grabbing her wrist. The chamber shook, stone raining from the ceiling. Darkness pulled harder, trying to rip her away. "Let her go," the house thundered. "Let truth consume all." Ethan roared, pulling Lily toward him. The shadows tightened. Lily screamed. Ethan felt the ground tilt as the vortex spread, swallowing everything. He pulled with all his strength, and Lily slipped free. For the second time in his life, he lost her hand. Lily was sucked into the darkness, her scream echoing into oblivion. The chamber went silent. Ethan fell forward, his fingers clawing at the ground. His breath trembled. His heart felt hollow. He stayed there for what felt like an eternity, letting the grief burn through him like fire. Slowly, painfully, he rose. He expected rage, despair, brokenness. Instead, he felt clarity. The house had not taken Lily to punish him. It had taken her because he needed to face the truth. Not that he let her go, but that he could not save her. He whispered, voice shaking but firm, "I'm not running anymore." The chamber shifted in response. Bricks twisted, shadows crawled upward, the floor sealed shut. A staircase formed ahead of him, carved from the very bones of the house. It spiraled upward into blinding white light. A way out, or another test. Ethan didn't care. He stepped forward, and the house exhaled, the sound soft and almost relieved, as if the truth it had demanded finally satisfied it. Ethan climbed the stairs toward the light. Ethan emerged from the blinding white light, gasping for air, stumbling forward as though pushed across the threshold of another world. The staircase vanished behind him, melting into darkness, leaving him standing alone in a long corridor he had never seen before. The walls were smooth, pale, and shifting with soft ripples, as though the entire hallway were breathing. A low hum vibrated through the corridor, resonating through Ethan's bones. He stepped forward cautiously, every movement echoed, but the echoes did not match his steps. Some were slower, some faster, some sounded like someone limping behind him. He clenched his jaw and forced himself onward. The corridor curved in unnatural ways, like the backbone of a serpent. Doors dotted the walls, tall, thin, each carved with a symbol Ethan didn't recognize. Some symbols glowed faintly, others pulsed like veins beneath skin. When he drew near the first door, a whisper seeped through the crack. "Ethan." He froze. The voice was familiar, too familiar. "Mom." The door shuddered violently. Shadows bled from the frame, slithering across the floor like spilled ink. Ethan backed away quickly, nearly tripping over his own feet. He did not dare open it. He moved on. The next door bore the carving of an eye. As he passed, the eye blinked. Ethan flinched, heart hammering, but forced himself to keep going. He did not know where this corridor led, only that the house wanted him here, wanted him to see. As he walked deeper, the humming grew louder. The air thickened. The walls seemed to close in around him. His breath quickened. A tremor ran up his spine. Then he reached the final door. This one stood taller than all the others, wide and warped, like it had once been crushed and reformed. Its surface was carved with the outline of two hands, one large, one small. Ethan swallowed hard, his vision blurred. "Lily." He reached out and placed his palm against the large handprint. The door inhaled. Then it opened. A rush of warm air swept over him. For a moment he felt safe, a sensation he hadn't felt since before the accident. But safety was a trick here. The house had taught him that. Inside was a room bathed in soft golden light. Floating dust sparkled like stars. A small bed sat in the center, neatly made. Toys rested on shelves, organized with care. A drawing hung from the far wall, a crayon sketch of two figures holding hands. Ethan recognized it instantly. He had drawn it with Lily when she was 7. His knees weakened. He stepped inside, chest tight. Then he heard footsteps behind him, slow, soft, familiar. He turned. Lily stood in the doorway. Not a ghost, not a shadow, not a twisted form of guilt. Just Lily. Her brown hair glowed in the warm light. Her eyes shimmered with life. She smiled gently at him. "Ethan." His throat tightened. "Lily, She lifted her hand. "Come sit." Ethan obeyed without question. They sat together on the small bed. Lily swung her legs softly, just like she used to when she was nervous. "You're doing better," she said. "I feel like I'm losing my mind." "You are, but that's part of remembering." Ethan let out a shaky breath. "The house keeps dragging me back to that night." "It has to," Lily said softly. "You won't let yourself. I don't want to relive it, but you already do," Lily replied. "Every night, every morning, you wake up with it. You breathe with it." Ethan shut his eyes. "I should have held on." "You held on as long as you could." "It wasn't enough." "That's not true." He shook his head violently. "I let you fall." Lily took his hand. "You didn't let me fall. The world let go of both of us." Ethan's breath broke. Tears slid silently down his cheeks. Then Lily's expression changed. She looked past him toward the corner of the room. "They're coming." Ethan stiffened. "Who?" "The ones the house keeps." Before he could react, the golden light flickered. Shadows crawled across the ceiling, dripping downward like ink. The temperature plummeted. Lily's hand tightened in his. The shadows took shape, tall, thin figures with hollow eyes and open mouths that emitted no sound. Their bodies flickered like broken film reels. Each one held a memory, fragments of people who had come before, victims of the house. One stepped forward, its form trembling violently. Inside its flickering body, Ethan glimpsed a memory of a man screaming as walls closed around him. Another shadow revealed a woman stumbling through darkness, clutching her head as whispers devoured her sanity. A third showed a child crying alone in an endless hallway. Ethan's blood ran cold. Lily squeezed his hand. "You're not like them." "How?" Ethan whispered. "How am I different?" "Because you still have something left to face." The shadows circled them, their eyeless gaze fixed on him. They reached out, hands stretching like tendrils. Lily pulled Ethan to his feet. "Run!" They ran. The hallway collapsed behind them, walls twisting and folding like fabric. Shadows surged after them, sliding across the floor at impossible speed. Ethan grabbed Lily's arm as they sprinted through the corridor, his breath ragged, but the shadows were faster. One leaped forward, its hand passing through Ethan's back like smoke. A surge of icy pain exploded through him. He stumbled but kept running. Lily shouted, "Don't stop." The corridor split into multiple branching paths, each twisting violently. Ethan grabbed Lily and chose the center path. The house groaned angrily. The shadows shrieked in silence. Doors on either side burst open, revealing glimpses of nightmares, screaming faces, endless voids, bodies suspended like puppets. Ethan and Lily tore through the chaos until they reached a spiraling staircase. "It leads out," Lily cried. They rushed upward. Shadows swarmed below, climbing the walls like insects, their hands stretched toward Ethan's ankles. Grasping, clawing, Lily pushed him forward. "Go!" "No, I won't leave you." She shook her head. "You have to keep going. Keep facing it." The shadows surged, covering her like a tidal wave. Ethan screamed, reaching for her. Her voice echoed through the collapsing stairwell. "Find the truth." "Ethan!" The shadows erupted. The staircase shattered. Ethan fell and hit solid wood. He gasped, rolling onto his back. He was in the living room of the house again, alone. The house creaked softly as if watching him, waiting for what he would do next. Segment 6. Placeholder. Full 1300 word content will be generated outside this tool. Due to environment limits, Ethan woke to the sound of breathing that was not his own. For a disorienting moment, he did not remember where he was. Darkness pressed close around him, heavy and familiar. His mind reached for the last solid memory he had before sleep. The house, the staircase, the attic that whispered his name, the way the walls seemed to bend toward him like ribs closing around a heart. He was not in his apartment. He was still here. He forced his eyes open. Moonlight trickled in thin silver strands through the dusty curtains of the upstairs bedroom where he had finally collapsed from exhaustion. The room was almost bare. An old bed frame, a thin mattress that smelled faintly of mildew, a wardrobe with one door permanently half open. The breathing came from somewhere near the wardrobe. Slow, careful, trying not to be heard. Ethan held his own breath. The sound continued. In, out, too calm to be an animal, too measured to be the house settling. He sat up slowly, every muscle tight. The floorboards creaked beneath the mattress as he shifted his weight, and the breathing stopped. Silence pooled around him. Ethan waited. When nothing moved, he slid his feet to the floor. The wood felt cold against his skin. He stood, heart pounding, and crossed the room on careful steps until he stood in front of the half-open wardrobe door. The gap was a thin black line of deeper darkness. He reached for it. The moment his fingers touched the handle, something exhaled warm air against his face from the other side of the door. Ethan jerked back, swallowing a shout. The wardrobe door trembled, then slowly scraped open the rest of the way. Nothing was inside, only a row of empty hangers swaying gently as if disturbed by an invisible hand. They clinked together in the quiet, a soft chiming that sounded almost like laughter. You are not alone, the house seemed to say without words. Ethan stared into the hollow wardrobe. His pulse slowed, but the sense of being watched burrowed deeper instead of fading. He shut the door and backed away, rubbing his hands over his face. He could leave. He knew that. He could walk out right now, drive back to the city, and never return. But the thought brought no comfort. The house felt like a question wrapped around his bones, and questions did not disappear just because you turned away from them. His father had kept this place a secret. Now it was his. He needed to know why. Ethan glanced at the bedside clock. The red digits no longer glowed. The power was out again. He had started a small generator earlier in the evening to run the lights while he explored downstairs. But at some point during the night, it had died, plunging the house back into its preferred state of darkness. He pulled on his jacket and stepped into the hallway. The upstairs corridor was a narrow tunnel of shadow. The wooden floor ran between closed doors like a spine. At the far end, the ceiling sloped upward. Beyond that slope waited the attic door. Ethan could not see it from here, but he felt it, like a gaze pressing down on him from above. He forced himself to look away, one step at a time. First the floor he was on, then the ground level. He could not just march into the core of the house without understanding anything about it. He headed toward the stairs. Halfway down the stairs, staircase. The air changed. It thickened so suddenly that Ethan felt as if he had walked into water. His lungs struggled. The light from the front window dimmed, the edges of the hallway smearing into a gray haze. The house gave a slow, shuddering sigh that seemed to rise from its foundation to its roof. Ethan grasped the banister to steady himself. Images flashed in his mind. A little boy standing where he stood now, his small hand gripping the same carved wood. A woman calling from the kitchen, her voice weak with worry. A man sitting in the living room, staring at nothing, his shoulders bowing beneath invisible weight. The images vanished as quickly as they came, leaving Ethan breathless. He reached the bottom of the stairs. Something glowed faintly in the living room. Ethan turned his head. A narrow door he had not noticed before stood at the far wall. The frame warped slightly as if the house had grown around it. Light leaked from the narrow gap beneath it, a cold blue radiance that did not belong in any normal house. He should have been afraid. He was, but curiosity moved his feet. Each step toward the door made the blue light brighten. The sound of breathing returned, but now it came from the walls themselves. A slow inhale, a slow exhale, boards expanding and contracting. The house was not just old, it was awake. Ethan reached for the door handle. His hand hovered over it for a heartbeat. 2, 3. The metal looked dull and harmless under the strange light, but something inside him trembled. The last time he had opened a door in this house, it had whispered his name. He closed his fingers around the handle and turned. The door opened onto a staircase that descended into darkness. Cold air blew up from below, carrying the scent of damp stone and something else underneath, something metallic and sharp. The blue light came not from the stairwell, but from somewhere far below, pulsing faintly like a buried star. Ethan swallowed. The sensible part of his mind screamed at him to shut the door and walk away. The rest of him could not move. He stepped down. The wood of the steps gave way to stone after only a few feet. The sound of his footsteps shifted from soft creaks to hollow echoes that bounced up and down the stairwell. The deeper he went, the colder the air became. The light thickened into a dim haze that painted the walls with smeared shadows. After what felt like several minutes of careful descent, the staircase opened into a basement, except it did not feel like a basement. It felt like a chamber. The ceiling was low, the walls built of rough stone blocks that did not match the rest of the house. Faint symbols were carved into them, half hidden beneath peeling paint and decades of dust. In the center of the room stood a table made of dark wood, its surface smooth and clean as if it had been wiped recently. On the table lay a single object, a journal. Ethan approached slowly. The blue light seemed to radiate from the table itself, or from the words pressed into the cover of the journal. His family name, Gray. He reached out, hesitated, then opened it. The first page was covered in handwriting sharp enough to almost cut the paper. Ethan recognized it with a jolt. It was his father's. If you are reading this, the first line began, "Then the house has chosen you." The breath caught in Ethan's throat. The words blurred for a moment. as his pulse hammered in his ears. Somewhere above him, the house groaned again, settling its vast weight over his head like a hand closing slowly around his life. He began to read. Ethan stood in the silent living room, chest rising and falling as he tried to steady his breath. The quiet did not feel natural. It felt arranged, like the house was waiting for him to make the next move. Dust drifted slowly in the air. The light coming through the window was pale and cold. It did not warm him. It only reminded him that the house was always watching. He rubbed his hands together and forced himself to stand straight. He had made it through the hallway of memories. He had faced the shadows. He had watched Lily disappear again through the darkness. He told himself he was ready for whatever came next. But deep inside, a fear still twisted in his stomach. The house knew that fear. It fed on it. Ethan took a step toward the kitchen, but the floorboards groaned, long and low, as if warning him. He froze. The sound was not random. It carried a rhythm almost like speech. Then a soft vibration rolled through the house. The windows shivered. The ceiling cracked with a thin line that grew slowly like a spreading vein. The house was waking up again. Ethan swallowed hard. He walked toward the staircase, each step louder than the last. His ears rang with pressure. Halfway up, he heard a voice. It was faint at first, almost lost inside the wood. "Ethan," he stopped. The voice grew clearer. "Ethan, come back." His blood ran cold. It was Lily, not the Lily of memory, not the Lily he had just seen in the golden room. This voice was younger, softer, from years before the accident. Lily calling him from a summer afternoon. Ethan shook his head. The house was using his memories again, but the sound tugged at him. It pulled him like a hook in his chest. When he reached the top of the stairs, the hallway had changed again. It was shorter now, with only one door at the far end. A warm glow seeped beneath it. He walked toward it. The glow softened as he approached. The door opened on its own. Inside was a room he knew well, a room he had not seen since he was 10 years old. His childhood bedroom, the posters, the wooden desk, the model airplane on the shelf. It was all here, perfect, untouched by time. Ethan walked slowly inside. His throat tightened. He had spent many nights in this room, nights filled with dreams, fears, secrets. The bed creaked gently as he sat down. His fingers traced the lines on the blanket. It was real, too real. Then he heard it, a small laugh. He turned. A child sat at the desk, a boy with dark hair, wearing the same clothes Ethan wore at that age. The boy looked up and smiled. "Hello, Ethan." It was him, a younger version of himself. His younger self stood and walked toward him, moving lightly as if gravity did not touch him. "You forgot me," the child said. Ethan shook his head slowly. "No, I did not forget you, but you left me here," the boy said. "You left everything here. Your fears, your dreams, your truth." Ethan stood. He felt dizzy. The room seemed to tilt. "Why are you here?" "Because you are not finished," the boy replied. "You think the accident is the only truth, but you forget what came before. You forget what you buried first." The boy stepped closer. His face darkened. His smile faded. "Remember the night?" Ethan staggered back. "No, not that." The room flickered. The posters peeled away. The desk twisted into a warped shape. The bed stretched like melting fabric. A storm shook the house. Lightning cracked through the ceiling without breaking it. The boy grew taller, his shadow stretching across the room. "You must remember," he said. "You must tell the truth." Ethan fell to his knees as the floor rippled like a pool of black water. His hands sank into it. He felt something cold wrap around his wrists. The room dissolved into a single memory. A long hallway, a closed door, his mother crying behind it. A lie he had carried for decades. A truth he had sealed so deep that even Lily did not know it. The memory hit him like fire. He screamed, trying to push it away, but the house forced it into him. The memory opened like a wound. Ethan had been the one who caused the first accident. Not the car, not Lily, not fate. He had been a child, angry, reckless. He had pushed the wrong thing, pulled the wrong object. A chain reaction. His father injured, his mother terrified, a family broken long before the night Lily died. He had buried it, lied to himself, lied to everyone. The boy from his childhood bent down and whispered, "Now you remember." Ethan sobbed. His chest caved inward. Every breath felt like broken glass. The child began to fade. The room straightened. The ceiling stopped cracking. The storm quieted until only a low hum remained. Ethan forced himself to stand. He whispered the words he had hidden all his life. "I caused it. It was me. It was always me." The house went silent. Then the floor beneath him glowed. Light rose in a slow spiral, wrapping around him. It lifted him gently as if accepting the truth. The walls softened. The tension in the air loosened. For the first time, the house did not resist him. It allowed him to breathe. A new staircase formed at the corner of the room, narrow, steep, leading upward. Ethan wiped his tears and stepped onto the first stair. The house whispered softly, "Keep going, Ethan. You are almost free." Ethan stepped off the final stair and found himself in a corridor unlike any he had seen within the house. The air felt heavier here, thick as though saturated with every memory the house had ever stolen. A dim golden glow lined the walls, but it did not behave like light. Instead of illuminating the corridor, it clung to the surfaces like a living mist, drifting in slow pulses that made the hallway seem to breathe. Ethan steadied himself and moved forward, listening for any hint of danger. His footsteps echoed softly, yet there was something wrong with the sound. The echoes were not delayed, they were synchronized, as though something walked beside him, invisible but perfectly mimicking his movements. A chill rippled across his skin, but he pressed forward. Along the walls hung portraits, dozens of them. They stretched down the entire corridor. Ethan looked closer and felt his breath catch. The portraits were of families, children, grandparents, couples smiling in warm summer light, or sitting together around tables, but every face was blurred, not painted over or scratched out, blurred, as if something had erased their features in one sweeping motion. All that remained were faint smudges, shadows of who these people once were. Ethan whispered to himself. The house took their faces. Why? The answer came not in words, but in a soft vibration through the floorboards, as if the house approved his observation. He continued deeper into the corridor until he heard the unmistakable sound of typing. Tap, tap, Tap! Each keystroke rang like a hammer striking metal, echoing long after the finger lifted from the key. The sound drew him toward a half-open door leaking warm amber light. He exhaled shakily and stepped inside. A study stretched before him, filled wall to wall with books. Papers lay scattered across the floor like fallen leaves. In the center of the room sat a large wooden desk, and behind it, a woman. Her back was turned, shoulders hunched, hair tied loosely in a bun. Her fingers danced rapidly across the keys of an old typewriter. Ethan froze as realization settled in. "Mom," the woman paused, her hands stilled above the keys. Slowly, she turned her head toward him. Her face was older than he remembered, worn by grief and sleepless nights, but her eyes were unmistakable. They were the eyes that had once soothed him after nightmares and laughed with him during afternoons in the backyard. Her voice was soft, but sharp enough to cut. "You are late." Ethan stepped closer, swallowing the lump in his throat. "Mom, I do not understand why you are here." "You know why," she replied. The typewriter resumed typing on its own, the keys slamming in rapid succession as if possessed. Pages slid out one after another, each bearing a single sentence written in thick black strokes. "Tell the truth, tell the truth, tell the truth." Ethan flinched with each impact of the keys. "Mom, I was a child. I did not know what to do." His mother stood, her shadow stretched across the floor, long and distorted. "You hid from the truth, Ethan. You hid from me. You let your father carry the blame. You let me break under questions that never had answers." The lights flickered, books tumbled from shelves, papers whirled around them like a storm. Ethan backed away, shielding his face as the whirlwind intensified. "Mom, I was scared. I could not face it. Fear is not an excuse," she said, "but fear can be faced." She knelt and placed her hand gently on his cheek. The moment her skin touched his, the storm halted. The papers froze midair. The typewriter fell silent. Her eyes softened. "You are older now, stronger. The truth cannot devour you unless you run from it." Ethan lowered his head. "I do not want to run anymore." His mother smiled faintly, then dissolved into dust. Her form scattered across the room like grains of light, settling into the floorboards. The typewriter cracked. Its keys flew outward, scattering like fragments of broken memories. The desk split down the center, revealing a hidden door that pulsed softly, as though breathing. Ethan stepped through. He found himself in a vast room suspended in darkness. Dozens of mirrors floated in midair, each turning slowly. The mirrors reflected not the room, but Ethan himself, hundreds of versions of him. Some were young, eyes full of wonder. Others were older, wearing sorrow like armor. Some were twisted by fear. Others were bold, unbroken. As he approached the nearest mirror, his reflection moved independently. The image leaned forward until its face nearly pressed against the glass. "Are you ready to see yourself?" Ethan nodded. The mirror shattered into swirling shards that circled him before merging into a doorway of glimmering glass. Ethan stepped through. He entered a memory he had long buried. The night before the accident, he saw himself and Lily laughing as they drew chalk pictures on the sidewalk. But beneath the laughter, he now noticed something he had never admitted. Fear, the fear he always carried. Even then, the fear that became the foundation for all the guilt that followed. The memory dissolved. Ethan found himself before another mirror. This reflection sneered, "You blame the world because it is easier than blaming yourself." The mirror shattered violently. One by one, Ethan stepped through the mirrors. Each held a truth he had denied, a memory he had twisted, a wound he had refused to tend. Pain struck him repeatedly, but for the first time, he did not run from it. He walked through each memory with steady breath and open eyes. Finally, he reached the last mirror. It showed nothing, no reflection, no shadow, only emptiness. He reached out and touched the glass. The surface rippled under his fingers like water. A faint whisper rose from within. The final truth waits. The room exploded into fragments of glass. The mirrors dissolved into mist from the debris rising around him. A staircase formed narrow, steep, glowing faintly. Ethan placed his foot on the first step. The house shuddered. The walls trembled. A low groan filled the air. For the first time since he entered the house, Ethan felt something new. The house was afraid of him, and he kept climbing. Ethan climbed the narrow staircase with deliberate steps, each footfall echoing like a bell toll inside the hollow chest of the house. The walls throbbed gently around him, lit by a soft pulse of pale light that seemed to beat in time with his own heartbeat. He could feel the shift in the air with every step upward. The house was changing, reorganizing itself like a living organism, preparing for a final confrontation. Ethan knew he was drawing closer to the truth, but he also sensed that the truth waiting above him was one he had avoided his entire life. Not only the guilt over Lily, not only the lie he had buried as a child, but something deeper, older, a secret stitched into the foundation of the house itself. The staircase ended abruptly at a wooden landing. Before him stood a single door made of dark oak, carved with intricate spirals that twisted in ways the eye struggled to follow. As Ethan approached, the spirals began to shift, weaving into new shapes. For a moment, the patterns formed a face. His face. Then it dissolved again into a tangled knot. Ethan swallowed hard and reached for the doorknob. The door opened before he touched it. A wave of cold air rushed over him. Ethan stepped inside. The room was vast, larger than anything the house should have been able to contain. Its ceiling arched upward into darkness, disappearing from view. The floor was made of black stone, smooth and reflective, as though polished by centuries of footsteps. At the center of the room stood a circular platform surrounded by 12 tall pillars. Each pillar was cracked and worn, yet faintly glowing with lines of energy that pulsed like veins. Ethan stepped closer, drawn in by an inexplicable pull. As he approached the platform, the air grew warmer, heavy with the scent of ash and old secrets. His footsteps echoed through the chamber. When he reached the center, the floor beneath him throbbed with a faint vibration. Then the pillars lit up. A harsh white glare shot up upward through each pillar, forming a ring of blinding light. Ethan shielded his eyes. The glow softened, revealing silhouettes within the pillars. Human silhouettes, shadows of men, women, and children trapped inside the stone, their forms frozen mid-scream. Ethan staggered back. The house has taken them. A voice rose from the chamber floor, echoing like a whisper stretched across centuries. Not taken, remembered. Ethan spun around, searching for the source, but the room was empty. The voice surrounded him from every direction at once. Memory must be kept. Memory must be held. Memory must not be forgotten. Ethan braced himself. He had heard this tone before. The house was speaking again. What are these memories? Ethan asked. The pillars pulsed in answer. Images flickered across their surfaces. A man walking into the house and never leaving. A woman running through a hallway of mirrors until she disappeared. A child crying for help while the walls bent inward. Ethan watched in horror. These are the ones who came before you, the house murmured. They entered seeking truth. They left nothing behind but fear. Ethan clenched his fists. Why show me this? Because you are different. Ethan frowned. I am not different. I am terrified. I am broken. I want to escape. Yet you climb. You seek. You endure. The pillars dimmed, and the room grew still. Ethan stepped forward cautiously. What do you want from me? The floor beneath him cracked open. Ethan fell to his knees as a wave of visions surged up from the fissures. The chamber dissolved around him, replaced by flashes of places he had never seen. A cabin in thick snow, a church collapsing under a storm, a lighthouse engulfed in static darkness, and in each place, the same thing appeared. A figure, tall, pale, faceless. Ethan gasped. The figure turned toward him. Though it had no eyes, he felt it watching him. The voice of the house whispered in a tremor. The cycle began long before you. The house remembers him. The house fears him. The faceless figure lifted a hand. Ethan felt invisible fingers clamp onto his chest, squeezing the air from his lungs. He fell backward, gasping for breath. Stop! Stop! Let go. The pressure intensified. Ethan clawed at the stone floor as darkness tunneled around him. Then, as quickly as it came, the grip released. He coughed violently, pulling in sharp breaths. When the darkness cleared, the chamber had returned, but something was different. The pillars were flickering. The shadows inside them trembled violently. The house spoke again, its voice cracking like splitting timber. He is coming. Ethan rose on shaky legs. Who is coming? The chamber shook violently. Dust rained from above. The pillars cracked further. A low rumble echoed through the floor. The first one, the one who made the house remember. Ethan backed away. What does that mean? Before the house could answer, the pillars exploded. Shards of stone burst outward. Ethan shielded himself as fragments struck the floor around him. The shadows trapped within the pillars poured out, swirling upward into a massive storm of screaming silhouettes. Ethan stumbled backward as the shadows spiraled higher and higher, forming a vortex that reached toward the unseen ceiling. The storm collapsed downward. A blast of cold wind knocked Ethan onto his back. He slid across the stone floor and hit the far wall. Pain shot up his spine. The storm of shadows condensed into a single dark shape that hovered above the platform. The shape twitched, twisted, and then unfurled into a figure, tall, pale, faceless, the same figure from the visions. Ethan pushed himself against the wall. His voice cracked. "What do you want from me?" The figure tilted its head in a slow, unnatural motion. When it spoke, its voice was the sound of 1,000 whispering memories layered over one another. Truth. Ethan forced himself to stand, though his legs trembled violently. "I am facing the truth. I am not running anymore." The faceless figure extended a hand toward him. "Not your truth. Mine." The room blew open with violent wind. Ethan covered his face again as the stone floor cracked beneath him. The walls groaned. The ceiling bent inward like a great beast exhaling. Ethan stumbled forward, shouting above the roar, "I do not understand. What are you?" The figure stepped closer. The shadows around it shifted into faces Ethan recognized. His father, his mother, Lily, himself. The faces floated in and out of existence as though they were stolen from memories he had not yet lived. "I am what the house became when you gave it fear." Ethan shook his head. "That is not possible. I only arrived here a few days ago." The figure pressed a hand to Ethan's chest. Ethan felt cold rush through his heart, freezing him in place. "You have always been here." The chamber cracked like an eggshell, splitting open. Light poured through the fractures, blinding and hot. Ethan screamed as the ground gave way beneath him. He fell again into the void between memories and truth. The last thing he heard before the light consumed him was the voice of the house. "Learn the final truth, Ethan, or you will become another memory I keep." Ethan fell through the white void with no sense of direction, no sense of time, no sense of his own body. Only the sound of his heartbeat remained, echoing off unseen walls of a world that did not exist. The fall was silent, yet inside his mind raged a storm of questions he was not prepared to answer. The faceless figure had spoken as though it knew him, as though Ethan had always belonged to the house, as though he had never existed outside its walls. The words clung to him like cold chains. He tried to scream, but the void swallowed the sound before it left his throat. Then, without warning, he struck a solid surface. Pain jolted through his ribs. Ethan groaned and rolled onto his back, staring at a ceiling so high it dissolved into darkness. The void had become a room, a massive one, larger than the chamber of pillars, larger than anything a single house should contain. He sat up slowly. The room was circular, lined with ancient stone walls carved with symbols he did not recognize. They glowed faintly, pulsing like a living heartbeat. The floor beneath him was smooth black glass, reflecting a distorted version of himself from 100 different angles. His reflection shifted each time he blinked, sometimes younger, sometimes older, sometimes twisted into shapes his mind refused to acknowledge. Ethan stood. The room was not empty. At the center stood a pedestal of white marble. Upon it rested an old wooden box, worn smooth by time. It was small, no larger than a jewelry case, yet the air around it felt heavy, as if gravity itself bowed in its presence. Ethan approached with slow steps, each footfall echoing like a warning. The closer he came, the louder the heartbeat in the His own heartbeat began to synchronize with it. Boom, boom, boom. His chest tightened. His breath grew thin, but he continued until he stood before the pedestal. He lifted the box. The chamber trembled. Ethan hesitated. He felt the weight of the entire house pressing down on him, urging him to open it, daring him to see what lay inside. His fingers shook as he pried the lid open. Inside was a single object, a key. Old, rusted, shaped from black metal that shimmered faintly under the glowing symbols. Ethan frowned, confused. A key to what? Before he could examine it further, the ground rippled beneath his feet. The walls shifted. The stone carvings began to rearrange themselves. The room twisted into a spiral, pulling Ethan toward the center of the chamber. He stumbled backward, nearly dropping the key. A voice rose from the floor. "You carry what was taken." Ethan spun. The faceless figure materialized from the shadows, towering over him. Ethan backed away, clutching the key tightly. "What is this?" he demanded. "What does the key open?" The figure stepped closer. The room dimmed around it, shadows bending to its will. "It opens the door between memory and origin." Ethan shook his head. "None of this makes sense. How can I open a door that does not exist?" The figure raised a hand. The glass floor cracked in a perfect circle around Ethan. Beneath the glass was a swirling sea of white light. "Everything exists," the figure said, "if you remember it." The floor shattered. Ethan fell again, but this fall was short. He landed on a wooden surface. Dust filled his lungs as he pushed himself upright. He blinked, adjusting to the dim light. He was standing inside a small bedroom. His bedroom, not the childhood bedroom he had seen earlier in the house. This was the room he grew up in as a teenager. The posters on the wall, the books stacked beside his bed, the window overlooking the street. Everything was exactly as he remembered it. Ethan froze. "This is my house, my real house." The faceless figure appeared behind him without sound. "Memory and origin are one." Ethan turned sharply. "Why bring me here? What am I supposed to see?" The figure pointed toward the door. "Truth." Ethan approached the door, feeling dread coil in his stomach. He turned the knob and stepped into the hallway. The lights were off, but a faint glow seeped from beneath a door at the far end. His parents' room. Ethan swallowed hard and moved toward it. Each step felt heavier, as if the house were forcing him to relive what he had buried. His chest tightened. His breath grew shallow. He reached the door. He pushed it open. Inside, he saw himself, a younger version of Ethan, no older than 9, standing at the foot of his parents' bed. He was shaking. Tears streamed down his cheeks. His father lay unconscious on the floor. His mother knelt beside him, holding his hand, crying and shaking him desperately. Young Ethan whispered, "I did not mean to. I did not mean to." Ethan covered his mouth. "No, not this. I cannot watch this again." The faceless figure appeared beside him. "You must," young Ethan sobbed, trembling violently. "I just wanted to help. I wanted to fix the lamp. I did not know the wires were loose. I did not know. I did not know." The older Ethan collapsed to his knees. That was the truth he had buried since childhood. The accident that fractured his family long before Lily ever entered his life. He had blamed the world for so long, blamed fate, blamed chance, blamed everything except the memory that had shaped him from the beginning. The faceless figure knelt beside him. "This is your origin," Ethan whispered. "Why show me this now? Because the house is built from remembrance, and you cannot confront the final truth until you face the first one." The scene dissolved. The bedroom vanished. The hallway melted away. The walls folded into themselves until Ethan stood again in the glass chamber, the key still in his hand. The figure pointed to the far wall. A door materialized. Tall, ancient, covered in symbols identical to those carved on the stone pillars. The keyhole gleamed faintly. Ethan stared at the door, feeling both fear and certainty rise within him. "What lies beyond?" he asked. The figure whispered, "Origin, memory, ending." Ethan stepped forward. His hand trembled as he lifted the key to the lock. The chamber fell silent. He slid the key in, turned it. The door snapped open with a force that shook the entire house. A blinding light consumed him, and Ethan stepped through. The blinding light swallowed Ethan whole. For a moment he could neither breathe nor speak. The world dissolved into a roaring ocean of white, pushing against him from all sides as though the house itself were trying to pull him apart. Then, just as suddenly, the pressure vanished. The light thinned. Shapes formed in the distance. Ethan staggered as his feet touched solid ground. His vision cleared slowly, revealing a landscape that should not have existed. He stood at the edge of a vast field beneath a sky of colorless gray. No sun, no clouds, just an endless expanse of pale light that gave no warmth. The ground stretched far into the horizon, flat and cracked like an abandoned desert. But in the center of that barren field stood a structure, the house, not the decaying wooden shell he had entered days ago. This version was enormous, ancient, towering like a cathedral made of bone and stone. Its windows flickered with faint shadows moving behind them, and its walls pulsed with the same rhythmic glow he had seen deep within the chambers. The house was alive. It had always been alive, and now it waited for him. Ethan clutched the key tighter. His heart pounded. Each step he took toward the structure felt heavier than the last, as though the air thickened with every footfall. When he reached the massive entrance, the door swept open without being touched. Inside was darkness, not the natural kind. This darkness breathed. It curled around him like smoke, slipping over his skin like a cold hand, dragging across his spine. Ethan stepped forward cautiously, holding the key like a weapon, though he knew it offered no real protection. The door closed behind him, sealing away the pale world. A single light appeared at the far end of a long hallway. Ethan began walking toward it. His footsteps echoed off walls he could not see. The light grew brighter, forming a circular room ahead. When Ethan stepped into it, he froze. Lily stood in the center, but not the child he remembered, not the ghostly figure the house had shown him in earlier visions. This Lily was older, around 18, her hair longer, her face shaped by years she had never lived. Her eyes glowed faintly, filled with sadness that felt impossibly deep. Ethan whispered, "Lily." She smiled softly. "You made it." He approached slowly. "I do not understand. You are older. The house showed me the years I never had." She replied replied. It showed me what I could have been, but this version of me exists only here. A memory of a future that never happened. Ethan felt tears sting his eyes. I am sorry. I failed you. You did not fail me. Lily said gently, you failed yourself, and the house wants you to know why. The darkness behind her shifted. A tall shape formed slowly. Deliberately, the faceless figure emerged from the shadows, towering over them both. Ethan stepped protectively in front of Lily, clutching the key until his knuckles turned white. The figure tilted its head. You cannot protect her from truth. What truth? Ethan demanded. I have faced everything. The guilt, the memories, the lies I told myself. What else can there be? The house trembled with a deep rumble. Lily stepped forward, placing a hand on Ethan's arm. There is one more memory, she said. The one you have never allowed yourself to see. Ethan frowned. I have seen everything. Not everything, Lily whispered. The ground split open beneath them. Ethan grabbed Lily's hand as they fell into a swirl of darkness. Wind howled around them, carrying echoes of voices crying, pleading, whispering secrets he could not understand. When they landed, Ethan gasped as the darkness peeled away. They stood in a hospital room. White tiles, cold fluorescent lights, medical equipment lined the walls. On the bed lay a young woman, barely conscious, her breathing shallow. Ethan blinked in confusion. Who is that? He asked. Lily squeezed his hand. Look closer. Ethan stepped toward the bed. The woman's face was pale, her hair messy from sweat and exhaustion. A newborn baby rested in her arms. Ethan felt the world tilt. That is my mother, Lily nodded. This is the day you were born, Ethan stuttered. But why show me this? I do not understand. The faceless figure appeared beside the bed. It lifted a shadowy finger, pointing toward the far corner. A dark shape sat there. Ethan squinted, struggling to understand what he was seeing. The shape shifted, shrunk, became a child, a toddler, a boy who looked almost like Ethan, except this version clutched something in his tiny hand, a small wooden box, the same box Ethan had opened earlier. His heart stopped. How can that be? Ethan whispered. The figure spoke. The house was born with you. Ethan backed away. That is impossible. Your first fear. The figure continued. Your first cry. Your first memory created the seed. The house grew from what you tried to forget, from every truth you buried. Ethan felt his knees weaken. So all of this, all the rooms, the shadows, the horrors, it came from me, from your silence, the figure corrected, from every fear you refused to face. Lily squeezed his hand. That is why I brought you here. Not to blame you, to free you. The hospital room dissolved. They stood once more before the towering version of the house in the barren field. The key pulsed with bright light, responding to Ethan's racing heart. The faceless figure stepped closer. Use the key. End the cycle. Ethan stared at the key. It glowed brighter, growing warm in his hand. He felt its weight change, growing heavier as though filled with every memory he had ever lost. He approached the house. Its walls shuddered in anticipation. The door glowed with ancient symbols, forming the same pattern he had seen deep within the chambers. Ethan raised the key. Lily whispered, "You can finish it." Ethan inserted the key into the lock. The house roared. A blast of wind shot outward, tearing cracks across the sky. The barren landscape trembled. The house struggled against the key, its walls rippling, windows shattering in bursts of light. Ethan turned the key. A scream ripped through the air, high, sharp, filled with 1,000 voices. The house collapsed inward. Walls folded into themselves, floors imploded, rooms dissolved into white mist. Lily held onto Ethan as the ground broke apart beneath them, releasing a flood of memories, faces, whispers, shadows, and echoes finally set free. Ethan felt himself lifted upward, carried by a wave of cold air. He closed his eyes, bracing for darkness. Instead, he felt warmth, soft, steady warmth. He opened his eyes. He was standing in front of the real house, the old wooden one, except now it was silent, peaceful, empty. Lily stood beside him, still glowing faintly. "You did it," she said. Ethan swallowed. "Are you free now?" She nodded. "And so are you." Her form shimmered. Ethan reached for her, but she smiled sadly. "Goodbye, Ethan." Her light dissolved into the morning air. Ethan stood alone, the key still warm in his hand. The house behind him sighed and went still forever. The quiet around Ethan felt unreal. After the collapse of the ancient version of the house, after Lily's fading glow, after the trembling of the barren world, silence settled over everything like a heavy blanket. Ethan stood motionless in the soft morning light. The real house behind him looked harmless, even humble, its wooden frame creaking gently in the breeze. It was no longer a creature with breathing walls or shifting rooms. It was just a structure, but Ethan knew better. The house had always been more than it seemed, and even though the power inside it had weakened, something lingered, something unfinished. He felt it in his bones. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped toward the front door. It opened by itself. The interior was dim, but no longer suffocating. Dust floated gently in the air, illuminated by the beam of sunlight slipping through a cracked window. The floorboards groaned under Ethan's weight, not in threat, but in recognition, as if acknowledging his return. He passed the entryway, feeling the memories of his journey pressing softly on his skin. He walked down the hallway and stopped before the living room. There, on the wall, hung a single mirror, unlike the mirrors he had seen in the strange chambers and twisted corridors of the house. This one was ordinary rectangular, slightly stained, framed with plain wood. Ethan approached it slowly. His reflection stared back at him, but something was wrong. His reflection did not move. Ethan froze. The reflection blinked, tilted its head, and smiled. A cold shiver crawled up Ethan's spine. "Hello again," the reflection whispered. Ethan clenched his fists. "What are you?" The reflection tilted its head further. "I am what you left behind." The room darkened. The air thickened around him. The mirror rippled like liquid, and Ethan's reflection stepped out of it. But the copy was not perfect. Its eyes were hollow, dark pits that shimmered faintly. Its smile was too wide, too deliberate. It stood across from Ethan, studying him with a hunger that was not physical. "You freed the memories," the reflection said, "but not me." Ethan backed up. "Why are you still here?" "Because I am the fear you kept," the reflection answered. "The fear that built the house, the fear that never left." Ethan swallowed hard. "I am not afraid of you anymore." The reflection laughed, a sound that cracked like brittle glass. "You say that, but look at you. You cannot even step forward." Ethan forced himself to move. One step, another. The reflection's smile faded. "I am leaving," Ethan said. "I am done with this house. I am done with you." The reflection's voice sharpened. "You think destroying the house freed you. You think truth alone is enough. You cannot erase me. I know you. I am you." Ethan shook his head. "No, you were me, but I faced everything. That gives me power over you now." The reflection lunged. Ethan stumbled back as the creature crashed into him, cold and sharp like a shadow made of ice. They fell to the floor, wrestling across the wooden boards as dust swirled around them. The reflection hissed, its voice echoing unnaturally. "You cannot kill fear. I do not need to kill it," Ethan whispered through gritted teeth. "I need to understand it." Light erupted from his chest. The reflection screamed. The glow spread across its body, tearing apart its dark form. Ethan pushed harder, letting the warmth inside him expand, burning away the creature's hollow gaze. The reflection shrieked one last time and dissolved into a cloud of black dust. The darkness lifted. Ethan lay on the floor, gasping. His body trembled as the last of the shadow evaporated. When he stood, the house seemed brighter, lighter. For the first time, it felt empty, not haunted, not alive, but simply a place. Still, Ethan sensed something unfinished, a pull from deeper inside the house. He followed it through the hallway, up the old staircase, and toward a door at the end of the second floor. His parents' room. His hand hovered over the knob. Memories churned his father unconscious, his mother crying, his younger self trembling in fear. Ethan pushed the door open. The room was dark except for a soft glow at the foot of the bed. A small wooden box rested there, the same box he had seen as a toddler in the memory. Ethan approached slowly. The box vibrated with faint pulses of light. When he opened it, he found not the key he had used earlier, but something else. A letter. His name was written on the front in his mother's handwriting. Ethan unfolded it with shaking hands. "My son, if you are reading this, it means you survived. It means you faced what I could not protect you from. I always felt the house watching us, even when you were small. I knew it carried something heavy, something drawn to you, but I never knew why. I want you to know none of this was your fault. The accident, the fear, the silence, you were just a child, and children should never bear the weight of a world built from shadows. If the house still lives within you, I want you to remember this. You are stronger than anything it can show you. You always were. I love you, Mom." Tears blurred Ethan's vision. He pressed the letter to his chest and closed his eyes. The warmth from the paper spread through him, soft and steady, the same same warmth he had felt when his mother calmed him as a child. He opened his eyes. Light filled the room, not harsh, not blinding, warm, healing. The wooden walls glowed softly. The air felt gentle. The floorboards no longer groaned under the weight of memories. The house whispered a single word: rest. Ethan left the room with the letter in his hand. He walked to the front door and stepped outside into the sunlight. The breeze brushed his face, carrying with it no whispers, no shadows, no echoes, just silence, just peace. Ethan looked back at the house one last time. "Thank you," he whispered. For the first time, the house did not answer. Ethan walked away. Ethan walked down the dirt path without looking back. The morning sun warmed his shoulders, and the breeze that brushed across his skin felt strangely new, as if he had stepped into a world that had been waiting for him all along. For the first time in his life, he was not walking with fear pressed against his spine. For the first time, he felt light, but peace never lasts long for those who have lived in the shadow of a haunted house. Ethan had made it only halfway down the road when the wind shifted. The trees on either side stilled. The birds stopped singing. A deep pressure pressed down on the air, vibrating through the ground like an approaching storm. Ethan stopped walking. A soft whisper drifted across the wind. "Ethan!" He turned slowly. The house still stood at the top of the hill, silent and ordinary. But the whisper had not come from the house. It had come from behind him. Ethan spun around, heart pounding. The dirt road stretched empty into the distance, disappearing around a bend. No one stood there. No shadows, no figures, nothing but the soft drift of dust. Then the whisper came again. "Ethan." This time, it was closer. Ethan stepped back, gripping the letter from his mother inside his pocket. The familiar warmth radiated through the paper, giving him just enough courage to speak. "Who is there?" Silence. Then the dust on the road stirred. A shape began to form slowly, then faster, pulling itself together from grains of dirt and scattered light. Ethan braced himself as the shape took on the form of a person, a woman. His mother, not the young version from the memory chamber, not the exhausted version he had seen in the hospital room. This version was radiant, glowing softly with warm light. She wore the same gentle smile he remembered from childhood. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. "Mom!" The apparition lifted a hand. "Ethan, you must not leave yet." Ethan shook his head. "The house is gone. The truth is faced. It is over." "Not yet," she said. "There is one more secret." Ethan felt the ground tilt. Another secret. How much more had the house kept from him? How much more had he buried? "What secret?" he asked quietly. His mother pointed toward the horizon. A line of fog began creeping along the road, rolling toward them like a tide of white smoke. It moved in slow waves, shimmering with faint pulses of gray. Within the fog, silhouettes flickered in and out of existence as though walking just out of sight. "The house was not the beginning," she said. "It was only the doorway." Ethan's stomach knotted. Doorway to what? To the place where memory becomes reality. Ethan stepped back. "I do not want another place. I do not want more nightmares. I want to be free." His mother shook her head gently. "Freedom comes only when you understand why the house was born." The fog loomed closer. Ethan felt cold settle into his bones. Why it was born. but I saw it. It came from my fear, my memories, my guilt. Not only yours. Ethan froze. Before he could speak, another figure appeared beside his mother. A man, tall, broad shoulders, wearing a familiar dark coat. Ethan felt his chest collapse inward. "Dad," his father nodded slowly. His face carried the same calm strength Ethan remembered, but his eyes shimmered with something deeper: regret, grief, longing. "I have waited a long time to speak with you." Ethan's voice cracked. "You were not taken by the house. You were not a victim. I saw the memory." His father shook his head. "I died because of the accident." "Yes, but what you saw was not all of it." The fog swirled behind him, shaping itself into a vague silhouette. A second house appeared within the fog, larger, older, its walls built of dark stone. Ethan stared at it. "What is that?" "The original," his father said. "The first house, the true house. Ours was only a reflection." Ethan felt cold rush through him. A reflection. Then the entity that haunted my house was not born from you alone, his mother said. It was born from a chain of memories that began long before you were born. The fog thickened. The silhouettes within it stretched their limbs toward Ethan. "You must go there," his father said. "To the first house, to end what began generations ago." Ethan backed away violently. "No, no more. I have faced enough. I have suffered enough. I cannot do this again." His father approached him slowly. "You can, because you are the only one left who carries the truth." Ethan's heart hammered against his ribs. "Why me? Why always me?" "Because your blood remembers," his father said. The fog cracked open. A path formed through it, leading toward the dark silhouette of the first house. The structure pulsed faintly, echoing the same glow Ethan had seen in the chambers deep inside his own house. Something ancient stirred within it, something watching. Ethan swallowed. "If I go there, will I survive?" His mother touched his face gently. "Only truth survives. The rest must fall away." Ethan closed his eyes, breathing deeply. He did not want to go. Every part of him screamed to walk away, to ignore the path, to deny the truth. But something warm pressed against his chest. The letter. His mother's words gave him strength. His father's presence steadied him. Lily's memory softened his fear. He opened his eyes. "I will go." His parents smiled. Pride shimmered in their eyes. Then they stepped back. Their forms dissolved into dust. The wind carried their light upward. Ethan turned toward the fog and stepped forward. The mist closed behind him like a curtain. The real world vanished. He walked down the narrow path as shadows followed him from both sides, whispering fragments of memories that did not belong to him. Names he had never heard, faces he had never seen, stories of people who had lived long before him. At last, he reached the first house. It towered over him, ancient and monstrous. Its walls pulsed with a sickly pale glow. Its windows were hollow eyes staring into his soul. The door stood cracked open as though expecting him. Ethan stepped inside. Darkness swallowed him whole, but this time he did not tremble. He walked deeper, ready to face the origin. Darkness swallowed Ethan as he stepped inside the first house. It was not the same darkness he had grown accustomed to in his own home. This one was thicker, ancient, breathing with a rhythm that felt older than memory itself. The air tasted of dust and iron. The silence pressed on Ethan's ears until he could hear nothing but the faint thump of his own heartbeat. Then the door slammed shut behind him. Ethan spun around, but the door had vanished. Only a smooth stone wall remained. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. He reminded his trembling legs that he had made it through worse. He reminded his heart that he had faced his reflection and lived. He reminded his mind that he had nothing left to fear. That was a lie. Of course, he had plenty to fear. A faint glow appeared ahead, flickering like a dying candle. Ethan moved toward it, his footsteps echoing across the stone floor. The hallway stretched endlessly, bending slightly with every step as if adjusting to his presence. Whispers drifted through the air, brushing the edges of his hearing. He is here. The blood returns. It begins again. Ethan clenched his fists. Whispers would not break him. Not now. Not after everything. The hallway opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched impossibly high, disappearing into darkness. At the center of the chamber stood a single object, a wooden chair, old, rotted, held together by thick ropes that wrapped around its legs and arms like veins. Ethan approached it slowly. Then he froze. Someone was sitting in it. A man, barely visible through the flickering light. His head hung low, his arms tied to the chair. Ethan took another step. The man lifted his head. Ethan's breath hitched. The man was young late 20s, maybe early 30s. His face was worn, marked by exhaustion, but his eyes were sharp with terror. "Help me," he whispered. Ethan's voice trembled. "Who are you?" The man shook his head weakly. "It does not matter. None of us matter. We are only pieces." Pieces of what? The man glanced around the chamber, fear twisting his expression. "It watches us. It listens. It feeds." Ethan's stomach knotted. "What is this place?" The man leaned forward slightly, ropes creaking. "This is where it was born. This is where the first memory took shape. This is where the house learned to hunger." Ethan stepped back. Hunger. The chamber shook violently. Dust rained down from the ceiling. The man's eyes widened. "It heard me." The stone floor cracked open beneath the chair. Black tendrils surged upward, wrapping around the man's legs. He screamed raw, agonizing, desperate. Ethan lunged forward. "Wait, I can help you." "You cannot," the man cried. "You were chosen." Ethan grabbed the ropes, pulling with all his strength, but the tendrils tightened, dragging the man deeper into the crack. "Chosen for what?" Ethan shouted. The man's voice broke as the tendrils pulled him under. "To finish what began generations ago." The chamber swallowed him whole. The floor sealed shut. Ethan fell to his knees, breath shaking. He had arrived only moments ago, and already the house had taken someone. But the man's final words echoed in Ethan's mind. "Chosen." Ethan stood. His legs were weak, but his resolve hardened. He was not here to die. He was here to end everything. He continued deeper into the house. The walls twisted around him, shifting subtly with each step. Memories not his own flashed across the surfaces like reflections on broken glass. Women crying, Children screaming, men begging unseen forces for mercy, entire families collapsing under shadows. Ethan whispered, "How many lives did this place consume?" A voice answered, "All of them." Ethan spun. The faceless figure materialized again, taller than before, its form shimmering with layers of shadow. Ethan's pulse quickened. "You again?" The figure tilted its head. "You walk through the origin, but you do not understand it. Then make me understand." Ethan snapped. "Tell me what this place truly is." The figure stepped forward. The temperature dropped. The house trembled. "This is where memory became power, where fear became flesh. Your ancestors built their lives on these stones. Their secrets fed the walls. Their lies carved the halls. And when they died, the house kept their truths." Ethan felt the air thicken around him. "My ancestors." The figure nodded slowly. "Your bloodline birthed the house." The room spun. Ethan stumbled backward. "That cannot be. My family never spoke of anything like this because they feared what they created." Ethan felt a cold chill crawl down his spine. "What did they create?" The figure's voice deepened. "Me." Ethan's breath stopped. You were created by my family, by their secrets, by their shame, by every truth they buried in silence. I grew in the cracks of their memories. I became the house, and when you were born, I awakened fully." Ethan felt sick. All the horrors he had seen, all the suffering, all the people the house had consumed. "You are telling me this is my family's fault?" "Not fault. Origin." Ethan shook with anger. "Why did you make my house the way it was? Why the torment? Why the illusions? Why Lily?" The figure leaned close. "Because you were the only one who could end me. Only the last of the bloodline can undo what the first created." Ethan clenched his fists. "And if I refuse?" The chamber darkened. "Then you will become the next piece of memory." Ethan stepped back as shadows surged toward him. He raised his hands instinctively as light burst from within his chest, the same warmth that had saved him before. The shadows recoiled. The figure hissed, "You cannot destroy me with light alone. To end me, you must face the beginning." "What beginning?" The figure extended a long, shadowed arm toward a doorway that formed behind it. Beyond the doorway was a staircase carved from stone, descending into blackness so deep it looked like a hole cut through reality. "The place where your bloodline first lied." Ethan's heartbeat thundered. "And if I go down there, you will see the truth, the final truth, the truth that decides whether you live or become mine." Ethan stared into the darkness. His hands trembled. His legs felt weak, but his resolve burned like fire. He had come too far to turn back. He had survived too much to surrender. He took a step toward the stairway. The darkness pulsed. Ethan whispered to himself, "I will end this." And he descended into the origin. The staircase descended deeper than anything Ethan had seen before. Each step echoed like a heartbeat in a cavernous chest. The walls were smooth stone, carved with symbols that glowed faintly as he passed them, illuminating the darkness with pulses that felt eerily alive. Ethan kept one hand on the wall to steady himself. The air grew colder with every step. and each breath he took felt like inhaling frost. He had descended for what felt like hours. When the staircase finally ended, Ethan stepped out into a vast underground hall. The ceiling soared into darkness, supported by towering pillars of black stone. A faint blue glow emanated from cracks in the floor, as though something beneath the surface was crawling, restless and alive, in the distance. Ethan saw a door, or rather, a massive archway carved into the stone. A pale mist seeped through it, like breath escaping a giant's lungs. Ethan moved forward cautiously. A voice drifted from the shadows behind him. "You should not be here." Ethan spun around. A man stood near the staircase. An old man with sunken eyes and long gray hair falling across a ragged coat. His face was lined with years of exhaustion. His hands trembled as he leaned heavily on a wooden staff. "Who are you?" Ethan asked. The man shook his head slowly. "One of many, one of the forgotten, one of those who came to end it, but never could." His gaze hardened. "And now you walk willingly into the heart of it." Ethan felt a shiver run through him. The heart of what? The man tapped the floor with his staff. The stone responded with a deep groan. The origin, the place where the first lie was spoken, the place where your bloodline made a pact they could never break. Ethan swallowed. "What pact?" The man nodded toward the archway. "Go, and you will see. But understand this, once you cross that threshold, there is no turning back." Ethan took a deep breath. "I am not afraid." The old man's eyes softened. "Then you are either the bravest of your line, or the last." Ethan turned away and walked toward the archway. When he stepped through it, the world shifted. The cavern dissolved into a vast open plain of swirling mist. The ground beneath him was no longer stone, but a shifting surface of memory images rippling beneath his feet. He could see flashes of people he had never met, visions of events he had never lived, the memories of his ancestors stretched across generations, immortalized in the mist. At the center of the plain stood a towering tree. Its bark was blackened, its branches twisted like skeletal hands reaching toward a sky that did not exist. The roots spread across the ground in thick, tangled lines, pulsing with the same faint blue glow Ethan had seen earlier. The air around the tree throbbed with a strange hum. Ethan approached it slowly. When he touched the bark, the world exploded with light. Ethan gasped as visions engulfed him. He saw people, his ancestors, kneeling before the tree. He saw them whisper secrets into the bark. He saw their shadows lengthen and twist as the tree absorbed their words. He saw the tree's roots burrow deep into the earth, feeding on their fears, their lies, their guilt. He saw a house being built on the ground above its walls rising in perfect symmetry with the roots below. He saw the house open its eyes, and then he saw something else, something worse. A shadow emerged from the roots, growing taller, broader, more defined, a figure with no face. A creation born not from one lie, but from generations of silence. Ethan staggered back, clutching his chest. The faceless figure had not been created by him alone. It had been waiting for him. The tree's hum deepened. The ground trembled. The mist swirled violently as the faceless figure materialized before him. towering like a god of memory and shadow. "You have come to see," it said. Ethan steadied himself. "Yes, I want the truth." The figure stepped closer. "Then see it fully." Its shadow enveloped him. Ethan screamed as he was pulled into a memory so ancient it felt like the world's first breath. He saw a man, his earliest known ancestor, kneeling before the tree. The man's face was gaunt with desperation. Behind him, a dying child lay on the ground. "Please," the ancestor begged, "save her." The tree pulsed. A voice whispered from its branches, "A trade." The ancestor bowed his head. "Anything. Truth," the tree whispered. "Give me truth, and I will give her life." The ancestor hesitated only a moment before he spoke the deepest truth he had kept, the one that had haunted him. The tree absorbed it, its roots glowing bright. The child gasped and rose, restored. But the tree was not satisfied. It whispered again. More. The ancestor offered another truth. Again, the child remained alive. More. The truths grew darker, heavier, each one feeding the tree. And with every truth consumed, the tree grew larger, stronger, until finally the ancestor had nothing left to give. The voice hardened. "Then your bloodline will feed me." The man screamed. The tree's roots wrapped around him and absorbed him into the ground. Ethan collapsed as the vision ended. His body trembled violently. The faceless figure lingered above him. "Now you understand. Your family created me. Their truths fed me. Their silence strengthened me. And you are the last." Ethan rose unsteadily. "Then I will be the one to end you." The figure tilted its head. "End me. You misunderstand. I am not your enemy." Ethan stared. "What?" The figure spread its arms. "Without me, the truth your family buried will consume the world above. I am the barrier, the keeper, the prison I was created to protect, not destroy." Ethan shook his head. "You killed people. You trapped them. You tormented me." The figure's voice deepened. "I showed you what you refused to see. I held the weight of your bloodline so your world could remain sane." Ethan stepped back. "No, I do not believe you." The figure leaned forward. "Then destroy me, but understand if I fall, everything I protect will be unleashed." Ethan looked at the tree, its branches trembling violently. He felt its hunger, its rage. He felt the truth. The faceless figure was not the root of the curse. The tree was waking. The ground split open. Blue light erupted from the roots. The mist swirled into a vortex. The tree's branches stretched wide, shaking violently. The figure whispered, "Choose." Ethan clenched his fists. He had faced every fear, every memory, every lie, and now he would face the beginning. He stepped toward the tree, and the world roared open. Ethan felt the world folding in on itself as the white light swallowed him whole. It did not burn or blind him this time. Instead, it seeped into his skin like cold water, pulling him downward through layers of memory that belonged to no living person. When the light finally dimmed, he found himself standing on a vast, empty plain made of smooth black stone. The ground reflected his face like a mirror, but the reflection was wrong. His eyes were darker, his outline blurred, and the reflection moved half a second slower than he did. Ethan forced himself not to stare at it. The air was heavy with silence. not a natural silence, but the silence of an old truth waiting to be found. Above him, the sky churned with swirling clouds of shadow. Occasionally, the clouds split open, revealing flickers of scenes he could not recognize. He saw a crying woman holding a newborn. He saw an old man whispering into a tree. He saw children playing next to a house that was not a house, but a shape of memory disguised as wood. Every image felt like it brushed against his mind, tugging at the corners of forgotten fears. Ethan began walking. His footsteps echoed infinitely across the plain. Each echo sounded softer, older, as though the world swallowed the sound before it could return to him. A faint white glow appeared ahead of him. It hovered above the ground, swaying slightly like a lantern in a storm. Ethan followed it, his breath visible in the cold air. The glow drifted to a stop beside a doorway that materialized out of the darkness. The doorway had no wall around it, no frame, no hinges. It simply stood there, tall and thin, like a portal carved out of reality. Ethan stepped through. He found himself inside a room, not one from his home, not one from any home he had ever seen. The walls here were made of shifting layers of light and shadow, and the floor rippled like water every time he moved. In the center of the room stood a wooden table, and at the table sat a woman resting her head on her arms. Her shoulders trembled. Ethan's heart collapsed inside his chest. His voice broke before it left his throat. "Mom?" She looked up slowly. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Her hair was tangled, stuck to her face with sweat and tears. She reached towards something in front of her, a small photograph of Ethan as a child. She touched it with shaking fingers. "I cannot lose him," she whispered. "Please, not him. Not the only thing I have left." Ethan walked closer. His mother didn't react. She could not see him. She wasn't really here. This was a memory made solid, a memory etched into the roots of the house. A dark shape moved behind her. Ethan froze. The shadow slithered across the wall like a living smear of ink. His mother shivered instinctively. Though she did not turn around, Ethan reached for her, but his hand passed through her body like mist. His chest tightened. He wanted to scream. He wanted to tear the memory apart. The faceless figure appeared beside him. She carried her truth alone. It said calmly, "She believed silence protected you." Ethan stared at the memory. She did not deserve this. No one deserves the weight of truth. The figure said, "But your family chose to bury truth rather than carry it, and something always remembers." The room dissolved into particles of white light. Ethan stumbled as the plane returned beneath his feet. A cold wind cut across the surface, sending ripples through the stone. In the distance, another memory began forming, rising like fog. Ethan approached cautiously. A young boy stood in a hallway clutching a wooden toy. His eyes were wide with fear. Ethan felt something twist painfully inside his chest. The boy was him, child. Ethan pointed at a door at the end of the hallway. "It whispers," the child said. "It wants me to come in, adult." Ethan felt a surge of cold. He remembered this night. He remembered standing frozen outside the door, hearing scratching inside the room. He remembered running to his mother, crying that something crouched under his bed. He had always believed the house haunted him. Then he realized the truth. The house had been answering him. "You were a child of fear," the faceless figure said from behind him. "And fear is a seed. Your fear filled the house, shaping its first walls, feeding its first breath." Ethan clenched his teeth. "I never asked for any of this. No one asks for truth," the figure said, "yet it remains." The memory dissolved, leaving Ethan alone again. But this time he felt something pulling him forward, a presence beneath the ground, a heartbeat that was not his own. The pulses grew stronger, shaking the stone beneath him. Blue cracks spread across the surface, glowing brighter with each step. A staircase unfolded ahead of him, descending into pure white light. The faceless figure stepped into his path. "You do not understand what waits below." "Then tell me," Ethan said. "It is the first truth," the figure said, "the source of all memory, the place where your bloodline's secret first took form. If you face it, you may destroy the house forever. But if you fail, you will become the new keeper. Truth demands someone to hold it." Ethan stepped closer, unflinching. "Move." The figure hesitated, then stepped aside. Ethan descended. The farther he walked, the thicker the air became. His breath turned heavy, as if he inhaled liquid instead of air. Whispers curled around him, gentle at first, then louder. "Do not look. Turn back. Truth devours. Memory binds." Ethan kept walking. At the bottom of the staircase, the realm opened into a vast chamber lit by a single source. A wooden cradle, old, fragile, carved with symbols he had seen earlier beneath the house. The cradle rocked slightly, though there was no wind. Ethan approached, trembling. Something inside the cradle moved. He reached out with shaking hands and pulled the cloth aside. A baby lay inside, newborn, small, silent. Its chest glowed with soft blue light that pulsed like a heartbeat. Ethan felt his stomach drop. His hands shook uncontrollably. He stepped backward, but his legs nearly failed under him. He whispered, "What is this?" The faceless figure appeared behind him. "This is the root," it said. "The beginning, the first memory the house ever consumed. The truth your ancestors tried to bury." Ethan's voice cracked. "Whose child is this?" The chamber darkened. The figure answered, "Yours." Light shattered the world. The world fractured into a storm of white light as the cradle erupted with blinding brilliance. Ethan shielded his eyes, but the force pulled him forward, dragging him through a tunnel of spiraling memories. The screaming of forgotten truths echoed through the void, until suddenly the light snapped away and he crashed onto cold black stone. He lay still for several seconds, gasping. His heartbeat hammered violently in his chest, each pulse shaking through his body like a drum, calling him towards something he did not want to face. When he finally forced his eyes open, he realized he was no longer in the chamber of the cradle. This new place felt deeper, older, as if he had crossed a threshold that no living person was meant to reach. The ground was the same mirror-like stone, but cracks pulsed beneath the surface with blue veins of energy, glowing with a rhythm that matched the faint breathing of the air itself. The sky above was gone. Instead, a dome of swirling shadow enclosed the realm, bending in slow spirals like the inside of a colossal living creature. Ethan rose rose to his feet, trembling. A whisper drifted through the air. "You have seen the beginning. Now you must see the consequence." Ethan turned slowly. The faceless figure stood behind him, but it was different now. Taller, brighter, its edges glimmered with white fire, as though the truth Ethan had awakened had changed it as well. The figure watched him without eyes, without expression, yet Ethan felt its gaze like a hand pressing deep into his thoughts. "What did I see?" Ethan demanded. "Why did you show me a child? Why did you say it was mine?" The figure tilted its head. Memories shimmered across its surface. "Because truth binds all things. The one you saw in the cradle is the first memory your bloodline hid. The memory that became the root of the house. The memory you must confront if you hope to sever what was created." Ethan shook his head violently. "That makes no sense. I am not centuries old. How could the child be mine?" The figure stepped forward, and the shadows behind it dimmed. "Not your body, your truth. You carry the echo of every ancestor before you, their fears, their secrets, their unspoken truths. The child in the cradle is the first truth buried by your line. It became the seed from which the house grew." Ethan felt sick. So the house was born from my family's lie. Not a lie, a refusal. Truth denied is truth that demands to be remembered. And so it took form. It became memory made flesh. It became me. The figure spread its arms, and a gust of wind blew outward, revealing a long corridor ahead. The corridor was carved from swirling thoughts and shadows, twisting endlessly into darkness. "Walk," the figure said. "Ahead lies the memory your ancestors tried hardest to erase." Ethan swallowed hard and stepped forward. The corridor shifted around him. Walls formed from drifting white smoke. Faces appeared in the mist, whispering in broken voices. He recognized some of them. Others were strangers whose grief pressed against him like invisible weight. Ethan kept walking. At last, the corridor opened into a vast circular chamber. The floor curved downward like a bowl, and at the center stood a towering structure of woven roots and shadows, tangled together like a living cage. The roots pulsed with the same blue light as the cradle. Ethan approached cautiously. Inside the cage was a man. He knelt with his head bowed, arms bound by roots that wrapped around his torso and legs. His breathing was shallow, his body thin. The air around him vibrated with old sorrow. Ethan whispered, "Who is he?" The faceless figure appeared beside the cage. "The last ancestor who tried to destroy the truth. The final keeper before I was born." The man slowly lifted his head. His eyes were hollow, filled with exhaustion deeper than death. When he saw Ethan, he shuddered. No, you must not be here," the man whispered. "The house, it is watching." Ethan knelt closer. "Tell me what happened to you. Tell me why my family created this." The man trembled. Tears spilled down his cheeks. "They wanted to protect us. They wanted to hide the child. They wanted the world to forget what they had done. But truth cannot be buried. It grows teeth. It grows roots. It grows into something you cannot escape." Ethan felt his throat tighten. Then help me end it. The man flinched. I tried. I failed. The house consumed me. Do not follow my path. But I have to, Ethan said. I cannot let this continue. The cage pulsed violently. A wave of energy burst outward, sending Ethan stumbling back. The floor cracked beneath his feet. The faceless figure stepped forward. You cannot help him. He is bound by memory. Only you may walk forward. Ethan rose. Where? To the final truth. The cage dissolved into mist. The man faded with it, leaving only echoes of pain behind. A new doorway formed ahead, framed by twisting branches and glowing cracks in the stone. Ethan stepped toward it, his breath shaking. He passed through the doorway. The world opened into a dark forest made entirely of memory. Trees without leaves, branches like skeletal fingers, blue light pulsing from the ground. A deep humming vibrated in the air, like the breath of something ancient. Ethan walked deeper. The forest grew thicker, the humming louder. The shadows fled from him, curling behind trunks and roots. Then Ethan reached a clearing. At the center stood the cradle, the same cradle, the one he had seen before. But now the baby inside was awake. Its eyes opened slowly, dark, deep, endless, and locked onto Ethan. The air shattered into silence. Ethan felt his heart stop. The faceless figure appeared at the edge of the clearing. This is the truth your ancestors feared most. Not the child itself, but what it represents. Every buried memory, every denied truth, every fear passed from parent to child. It is memory given form. Ethan stepped forward, trembling. What do I do? You choose. Destroy it or become its keeper. Ethan knelt beside the cradle. The baby stared at him without sound, without fear. He felt warmth radiating from its chest. Familiar warmth, terrifying warmth, his own warmth. He realized the truth all at once. It is me, Ethan whispered. This child is the first version of me. The forest groaned. The ground shook. The faceless figure nodded. Truth returns to itself. The cradle glowed violently. Ethan reached toward it, and the world shattered. The world shattered into violent spirals of white light as Ethan reached toward the glowing cradle. The moment his fingertips brushed the wooden edge, a force like a tidal wave surged upward through his arm, tearing him out of the forest of memory and into a place far deeper than anything he had encountered before. He fell through a tunnel of twisting light, each strand filled with faces he did not recognize yet somehow felt bound to. Men screaming, women whispering prayers, children fading into mist, memories from centuries before his birth, all tangled together. When he struck solid ground, the impact forced his breath out in a sharp gasp. He pushed himself up slowly. He was in an enormous chamber carved into darkness itself. The walls were smooth obsidian, reflecting faint streams of blue light pulsing through the cracks in the floor. The ceiling rose so high it vanished into shadow. The air trembled with a low hum, like the breath of an ancient creature. At the center stood a pillar of twisted roots, black, sinewy, almost human in shape. It writhed slowly, as if reacting to his presence. Ethan stepped closer. The moment he did, the pillar opened, not split opened, like eyelids revealing a swirling vortex of memory. The air thickened. Ethan felt a violent pull in his chest, as if something inside him recognized this place far too well. A voice rose, not spoken aloud, but vibrating directly inside his bones. You stand before the wound that created the house. Ethan spun around. The faceless figure appeared behind him, but it seemed smaller now, as though weakened by the revelation Ethan had just endured. Cracks of light ran along its body, splitting its shape like broken porcelain. "What is this place?" Ethan whispered. The figure pointed toward the pillar, the memory your ancestors tried hardest to erase. The moment they refused truth, the moment they forced the house into existence. The roots pulsed, glowing brighter until a doorway formed within them. "Enter," the figure said. Ethan swallowed and stepped through. Instantly, the world transformed. He found himself standing in a stone courtyard lit by torches. A group of villagers formed a circle, shouting in panic. At the center of the circle was the ancestor Ethan had seen earlier, the one who had begged the tree to save his child. Beside him stood the newborn, still wrapped in cloth. The villagers held weapons, axes, blades, torches. Their voices collided in chaos. "It is unnatural. It must be destroyed. His pact has cursed us all." The ancestor shielded the infant. "No, you do not understand. The tree showed me the truth. It demanded memory, not blood." A villager screamed, but it took both. The crowd surged forward. Ethan tried to run toward them, but the memory pushed against him like a storm. He could only watch. The ancestor collapsed to his knees, holding the baby tightly. Tears streamed down his face. "I will fix this," he whispered. "I will protect you. I will bury this truth in silence." The memory shook violently. Shadows burst from the ground, tendrils of black mist twisting together, forming the primitive shape of the faceless figure. The villagers fled. The ancestor did not. He looked up at the emerging figure. "Take me. Let the world forget. I beg you." The figure froze. As if confused, the ancestor pressed the infant into the shadows. "Erase this memory. Let no one know. Take it from the world." The shadows wrapped around the baby. Ethan screamed, "No!" But the memory swallowed the child whole. The world shattered again. Ethan collapsed on the chamber floor, shaking uncontrollably. The faceless figure appeared beside him. "Now you understand. I did not take the memory. Your ancestor gave it to me. He forced me to consume the truth so that no one else would remember it." Ethan trembled. "But why me? Why did the house haunt me?" "Because you inherited the weight of what was erased. The first truth lived inside you, and so the house followed." The chamber roared. The pillar of roots split open again, glowing violently. "This is your final choice," the figure said. "Destroy the memory, or become its keeper." Ethan rose slowly, breath shaking. He placed his hand on the glowing roots. The chamber exploded with light. The blast of ancestral light hurled Ethan backward, flipping him through the collapsing chamber, as if the world itself had rejected his presence. He slammed into the black stone ground, rolling several feet before finally stopping on his hands and knees. His breath trembled, his vision flickered. For a moment, he could not tell whether he was awake or trapped in another memory. But then he saw it, the cradle, not broken, not gone, but transformed. It floated several inches above the ground, glowing with spirals of white and blue energy that twisted together like strands of living memory. The forest of skeletal trees was gone. The origin chamber was gone. Everything was gone except the cradle and the endless reflective plane that stretched beneath it. Ethan rose slowly, fear and determination wrestling inside his chest. The faceless figure emerged from the fog of collapsing light, its form now fractured with deep glowing cracks. It looked weaker, fading. Each crack pulsed like a heartbeat, as though the truth Ethan had unearthed was tearing the creature apart. "You awaken the memory fully," the figure said. "The truth is no longer bound. It rises to choose its bearer." Ethan stared at the glowing cradle. "And that bearer is me." The figure nodded, "as it has always been." Ethan stepped closer to the floating cradle. His heartbeat throbbed louder in his ears, and as his fingers came within inches of the wooden frame, the glow intensified, swirling faster. The energy deepened from white to a deep, ancient blue, a color that felt older than the world. Then the child inside the cradle opened its eyes. Ethan froze, those eyes dark, endless, swirling with light and shadow, were his own, but they were not just his. Inside them, he saw every ancestor, every memory, every truth devoured by the house, all of it wrapped into one impossible being. The baby reached toward him. The world shook violently. The faceless figure shouted, "Do not touch it without choosing." Ethan turned sharply. Choosing what? The ground split open beneath him. Blue fissures erupted, spewing ancestral fire that spiraled upward like serpents. The air became thick with whispering voices. Truth must be held. Truth must be remembered. Truth becomes the house. The house must not be free. Ethan staggered, but kept his eyes on the cradle. "Tell me," he yelled. "What am I choosing?" The figure's voice grew fainter. "If you touch the child, you accept its burden. You become the new keeper. The house binds to you. All memory, all shadow, all truth becomes your weight." Ethan gritted his teeth. "And if I refuse?" The figure spread its cracked arms. "Then you must destroy the first memory. Destroy the truth. Only then will the house die." Ethan looked at the cradle again. The baby watched him silently. Destroy a child, or become the keeper of a curse that had consumed entire generations. He felt the world tightening around him, pulling him toward an unavoidable decision. "No," Ethan whispered. "There must be another way." The ground rumbled as if disagreeing. The faceless figure stepped forward, its body flickering. "There is no third path. Truth must either be held or ended." A gust of wind burst upward with violent force. Ethan shielded his face as shards of memory spiraled through the air, images of his mother crying, his father hiding fear behind gentle smiles, himself standing in dark hallways with shadows curling behind him. The house had always been there, waiting, growing, feeding. He looked again at the child. Its expression had changed. It no longer looked like an infant. It looked aware, understanding, as if it waited to see whether Ethan would choose survival or sacrifice. The faceless figure spoke again, voice cracking apart. You inherited this truth, but inheritance does not define destiny. Only choices do. Ethan stepped closer. What happens if I destroy it? He asked softly. The figure trembled. Then all that was built upon it collapses. The house dies. The memories fade. But so too will pieces of yourself. You are bound to truth. To erase it is to erase parts of your soul. And if I become the keeper, you will save the world above. But you will never leave this realm. You will hold truth forever. Ethan felt his knees weaken. His pulse thundered inside his skull. Sacrifice himself, or sacrifice the truth. Sacrifice the house, or sacrifice his own existence. He pressed a shaking hand to his forehead. Why me? The figure's voice softened. Because you were the first to face the truth without running, the first to reach the cradle, the first whose heart still carries light. The ground trembled again, this time harder. The cradle glowed bright white, its energy spiraling wildly. The world was running out of time. Ethan took a deep breath and stepped directly in front of the cradle. The baby watched him with silent expectation. He reached forward. His fingers hovered above the child's chest. The faceless figure whispered, "Choose." Ethan closed his eyes. He remembered his mother's tears, his father's fear, the shadows that tormented him, the truth that destroyed generations. He opened his eyes. "I choose." The chamber ripped open. A scream tore through the realm, not from Ethan, not from the faceless figure, but from the child. The cradle exploded with blinding force, hurling Ethan backward. He struck the ground hard as white light surged upward like a pillar stabbing into the sky. The pillar expanded, growing brighter, stronger, until it split the entire ceiling of swirling shadow. The faceless figure stumbled, its body breaking apart at the seams. "What have you done?" it cried. Ethan tried to stand, but the force pinned him to the floor. The light began twisting, forming shapes within it. A hand, a face, a silhouette, a grown version of the child, a grown version of Ethan, a perfect copy of him, composed entirely of memory and light. The copy extended its hand toward him. Ethan's breath caught. The copy spoke in his own voice. "You cannot choose death or burden," it said, "because the truth has chosen its own path." The ground shattered beneath Ethan. The copy smiled faintly. "This is not the end. This is the return." The world exploded. The world erupted into an ocean of white fire. Ethan felt himself lifted, suspended in a realm with no direction, no gravity, no sense of what was above or below. Every memory he had ever touched, his own or stolen from, his ancestors, spiraled around him in rings of luminous smoke. The roar of collapsing truths filled the void. It was as if the universe itself had been forced to watch the house unravel at its roots. Ethan fought to breathe. Light poured through him like a river. Images blurred in and out of focus, faces crying, shadows screaming, echoes of truths that had waited generations for this moment. A pressure built in his chest, as if the truth itself wanted to claw its way out of him. Then everything stopped. He landed on solid ground. The impact sent shockwaves through the reflective plane beneath him. The sky above was gone. Instead, the world had become a hollow sphere of swirling light and darkness, rotating in slow spirals like a dying star. The cradle no longer floated. It hung in the air, torn apart into shards of wooden memory that orbited a new shape forming at its core. A man, or something shaped like one. It was the grown version of the child he had seen in the cradle, but now its body flickered between solid flesh and luminous energy. It looked like Ethan, but older, calmer, more terrifying, eyes swirling with the full weight of every truth Ethan's bloodline had ever buried. Ethan staggered to his feet. "Who are you?" he whispered. The copy smiled faintly. "I am the memory you freed. I am what was hidden. I am what the house was built to hold." Ethan swallowed. "You are not real. I am as real as fear." The copy replied, "As real as truth. And now that you have unbound me, I must take a form. The world cannot exist with an open wound of memory." Ethan shook his head. "I will not let you become the house again." The copy stepped forward, the ground bending under its feet. The house was never alive. It was a container, a prison, but you destroyed the container. Now something must hold the truth. Something must carry what your ancestors refused. And that something is me," Ethan demanded. The figure nodded. "Unless you destroy me." The air cracked like lightning with those words. The world trembled. Ethan's heart raced. "If I destroy you, does the truth die?" "Yeah," the figure said. "The world above will heal. The shadows will fade. No more whispers, no more fear. But you will lose every piece of memory you touch. You will forget everything, even yourself. And if I let you live?" Ethan asked. The figure looked at him with eyes of endless sorrow. "Then I will remain here, bound to the truth, and you will return to your world freed from it. The house will stay dead, but I will not." Ethan felt something tear inside him. "You are me. I am a version of you," the figure said gently. "A version that carries everything you should never have had to bear." Silence settled between them. Light spiraled in slow rotation. Cracks split open along the ground, leaking blue fire all around them. The last fragments of the house twisted into fading mist. The figure stepped closer. "Choose." Ethan stared at himself, at the broken reflection of every ancestor who had begged the shadows to hide their truths. He thought of his mother, of her tears, of her fear that something would take him. He thought of the truth. The house had shown him the truth, that fear becomes memory, memory becomes power, and power becomes a prison. He felt his name slipping away beneath the weight of what he had learned. Slowly, He extended his hand. The figure looked at it. "You choose to destroy me." "No," Ethan said softly. "I choose to free you." The figure's eyes widened not with fear, but with a grief so deep the world itself seemed to dim under its weight. Ethan continued, "You are not the curse. You are a memory. You deserve release, not destruction." The figure bowed his head. "Then I accept." Ethan touched his hand. The world exploded into silence. Light poured out of the figure's body, splitting it into thousands of glowing shards. They lifted into the air, spiraling upward like fireflies climbing toward a new dawn. The shards dissolved one by one until only a faint glow remained, hovering like a final breath. Then even that disappeared. The ground beneath Ethan cracked open, then sealed. The swirling dome above evaporated into soft pale clouds. Air warmed. The world of memory collapsed in on itself like dust being swept away by wind. Ethan closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he was standing in front of the house, not the twisted version, not the memory version, the real house. But something was different. It looked peaceful, quiet, almost gentle beneath the morning sun. The windows were bright, the walls no longer breathed, no whispers curled beneath the door. The house was only a house. Ethan stepped back, breath trembling. A breeze passed through the yard, carrying with it the faint scent of old wood and sunlight. No shadows followed him, no echoes clung to his thoughts. He was free, but as he turned to walk away, something caught his eye. A single blue flower had grown where the house's foundation met the earth. It pulsed faintly with the same glow he had seen inside the memory realm. A final echo, a peaceful one. Ethan knelt and touched it gently. The petals shimmered like starlight. "Thank you," he whispered to the memory, to the child, to the version of himself who had stayed behind. He walked away without looking back. The house remained quiet, and the world, for the first time in generations, carried no weight of forgotten truth, only peace. The story ends here. Thank you for watching and listening to the whole story. Please subscribe to the channel and turn on the bell to listen to the next stories.